The climb is fun, but staying on top is actually harder than the climb itself.
Our saying to board servicemen doesn't have to be nasty. We really live it.
It's really playing at the highest level to being caring and compassionate and not losing what our roots are.
I like the idea of lawyers not even touching the technology because, let's be honest, they're the ones that f it up.
Will you be able to adapt to the new legal landscape? You have to know what's going on in your practice. You have to be able to steer that ship. All right, gentlemen, thank you for joining me. I'm incredibly honored. Let's kick things off. We call this the Law Firm of the Future panel because we want to really talk about where you see lawyers and law firms. What does it look like over the next 5 years, 10 years? And really, just what is that situation? What can we do to prepare for that? AJ, we'll start with you. Voted America's techiest lawyer. I think you're going to be the most controversial. So kick us off.
What are you saying? What are we going to do in the next 5
Where are we
10?
going? What's going to happen?
It takes a long time for industry to shift. I would say that the legal industry as a whole, it's pretty much agreed we're kind of behind the curve in technology. And I think a lot of the ethical rules and some of those things are the reasons. But I think we're also very smart people, and there's a lot of money in the industry, so I think it's going to move fast. So in 5 to 10 years, I would say there's going to be a much bigger budget allocation towards things like coaching, what a lot of industries call BPOs, business process or outsourcing, than technology. Because like you said, it starts with people, process, then tech. So I think we'll automate a lot of things. Like I've always said, moving a paragraph from here to there should never be something you get paid for as a lawyer. It was very controversial when Rocket Lawyer and those guys were coming out. But I think there's value in fighting for the clients and some of the consulting and thinking and decision makings we do as a lawyer that should be valued more. So I think that substitution happens.
All right. Anything off limits, gentlemen? No. All right, Alex, I want to call on you. So we've talked about VCs, hedge funds, private equity coming into this space, and you talk about it, people think, hey, this is going to be some future thing. What's your experience been? Are they real? Are they for real? Are they having these conversations?
I knew he was going to ask me this question, but yes, so in investigating and trying to get an understanding of the ABSs and private equity, I spent a week in New York last week, and I met with several, and I was shocked at the interest that they had in coming in the legal space. And just being very honest and transparent, I had 45,000 cases, and I was offered a tremendous amount of money for my law firm, but a part of it was they wanted to also deploy some money behind it and keep me on for a number of years and build it out more nationally.
Yeah. And then, Bob, I know you're data obsessed. If there's somebody on this planet who runs one of the most successful family law practices in the country, incredible focus on data, metrics, KPIs, where do you see that going in terms of leveraging data?
I'd like to think that we're going to keep moving forward. When it comes to a practice, when VC comes in, when all these equity accounts come in, what they're really looking at your numbers. And you need to make sure that you're hitting the fundamentals everywhere you can. So when I look at it, I sit there going, you really, if you're not already, you need to think about the business side of your practice. And we need to get over our fear of KPIs. I think a lot of people what is it? We all do them. There's not a firm owner in here that doesn't have a KPI. At least they have a tax return. They have a profit. They have expenses. The trick is going, why do I have that profit? Why do I have this income? And then trying to improve every little step along the way.
And Eric, yesterday, Kevin O'Leary was talking about actually even John Morgan was saying that when he's looking at potentially acquiring another law firm, he's really looking at the people and the importance of culture. And I know this is something that you've heavily emphasized at Chaffin Luhana, if you could speak to that.
Yeah, Michael, I think for us, 10, 12 years ago when we started our firm, we had one core value, doing good by doing right. And I think we had an idea of what that meant to us personally, but to be able to clarify that vision and then communicate across the firm, it's been a rallying call for us. I think it's actually something now, 15 years ago, 12 years ago, you didn't see many law firms working in the communities, having a foundation, showing what they're able to do for impact for their clients, but then more broadly, it's something we've been doing since day one, and I think it is something that we all feel good about. It actually is something we have to do because of tort reform, and I think it's only going to get worse, is the Google law firms, the other firms that are there and just so big and people feel like numbers. I think the more we can show that we're involved in the community is just critically important, and I think for us, our team, many of you are here. I'm so happy that our team was able to come. Chris, thank you for including them. And, it's something we really rally behind.
And Alex, so I don't know how many people know this. I mean, many people know you as a very aggressive advertiser with a lot of billboards, doing a lot of traditional media for years. You've grown the brand, but I don't know that a lot of people know how you've shifted your budget allocation in terms of media over the years, if you could speak to that.
Yeah, well, up until 2017, we were 100% traditional. The only term I knew was SEO. But in 2017, I obviously saw things changing. We're probably 70-30 now in digital. We still have some traditional in the states that we've known.
So 70% digital.
70% digital now. And it's been, it's allowed me to grow a national practice right now.
And AJ, you've got the best shoes up here. So yesterday, Kevin O'Leary's talking about the importance of data. Data's the new oil. We've done a podcast. You said the exact same thing. If you could speak to that specifically from a law firm context, why is data so valuable?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it was like 10 years ago almost whenever data became more valuable than oil. So I thought that was an interesting shift when I first saw it. I think it's fascinating, without overcomplicating the answer, that lawyers are in telling stories, especially trial lawyers. That's our job. And the only difference between that and like a novelist is it has to be based on the truth, information. It's data, right? Whether it's to your practice, to your clients, or anything else. And so if you have more data, and if you have a way to take it and create business information that allows you to make a decision better, that's the whole thing. So I think right now, we're finally in a point in time where you can get everyone's data. Like, there's no privacy anymore. We lost that battle a long time ago. It's either no one knows it or everyone does. So if you need information, it's just about going and looking for it, knowing how to use data, how to buy it, how to manipulate it for your purpose as a lawyer.
Yeah. Bob, speaking to you as a family law practice, one of the largest in the nation. Now, they usually don't grow as big as you. How many lawyers, how many staff?
We have about 40 lawyers, about 100 staff.
40 lawyers, 100 staff. What do you think is the reason why you've been able to grow your practice so much, and what do you think is the reason why many practices like yours struggle to really expand?
The challenge is trying to understand where's the profitability points and taking every little measurable. The difference with family law is you have a billable hour generally. You know what your margins are going to be. You know how many hours people are going to bill. It's really sitting down and comparing those versus your matrix. And one thing I advocate, getting that executive dashboard out there so that you can sort of have a firm grasp on where you are. We have numbers that will tell you the capacity needed, so you know when you need to expand, and frankly when you shouldn't. So I think it's just using the data, just getting there, and what do you do with it?
All right, now here's the thing. I want to make sure this is valuable for everybody here. I love you guys. I don't want to pull any punches. If you decide not to answer, you can say next question. But Bob, you mentioned this billable hour model, but what do you see as the future?
The future is not billable hours. The marketplace is going to dictate it. So for family law firms and other firms that are on a billable hour model, that's not what the consumers want. They don't want just unending, unknown expenses coming at them. So I think the future holds there's going to be more flat rates. There's going to be expectations for the total cost of the case. You wouldn't go to a car mechanic and say, hey, fix my car, and they say, well, I'll put really hard work in, and I'll bill some hours, and I'll let you know when it's done. And by the way, we don't know what it's going to be and how long it's going to take. So I think consumers want that type of security, and that's going to be critical to the future.
Yeah. And then Alex, I have a question for you in the sense that as you've grown your practice now, you've grown from being the go-to firm in Alabama to now a national firm. If you were somehow exiled from Alexander Shunnarah trial attorneys, how would you take yourself out?
How would I take myself out?
Yes, sir.
What do you mean?
How would you overcome that? How would you come back and just defeat yourself, defeat the firm?
I would definitely start with the infrastructure. I would probably go seek some Wall Street money or someone who would back me, since I understand the space, and I would just build it from day one. I would deploy. I would hire the best trial attorneys. I'd get the best data people. I'd get the best the best trial attorneys. I would get the capital. I would get the infrastructure, and I would go all digital probably.
Mm-hmm. Now you say get the capital. And this is interesting because even the firm today is approaching $100 million in revenue, and you're saying get the capital. So what do you mean by that?
When Wall Street decides to come in, they did it in the 80s with real estate. They've done it with the healthcare. They did it, and they're coming, and they're selling. They just want to make legal services better, a better experience for legal services.
We're not talking about a few $1 million, right? We're talking about...
We're talking about billions of
I was
dollars.
about to say, I think it's so funny. Lawyers think like that David and Goliath story, and we talk about it a lot, champion against the big corporations, but it's like, this isn't David and Goliath. This is where the reality comes in. Wall Street's the Goliath that never loses. You're talking about trillions of dollars. Everyone here is broke, has $0 compared to Wall Street. John Morgan's broke. So yeah, if you're going to play the next game, you got to learn that business.
I think that, and I hate to say this, but I do think that like we see Aspen Dental, we're going to see some firm, I don't know the name of the firm, and they'll be with 150 locations offering some type of legal services.
And Eric, I'm curious, when you and I met, you were already successful, running a phenomenal mass tort practice, and also having leadership in a lot of the various litigations. And it's interesting hearing kind of the evolution of the firm, of building out technology within the firm. If you could speak to that.
Yeah, I think for us, we really just embrace where things are headed. And I think a lot of people in the room, you're probably sitting now, as we've all alluded to and talked about the last couple of days, is that fear of Wall Street money coming in and what that's going to change for the world. And so, Chris Beck's, for example, and hanging out with guys like Alex, Anthony, others having these discussions about big data and what's the direction of it. And so we've just fully embraced it. Cy Wakeman to me is just an important discussion, not just for our staff, our team members, but for ourselves. And so if you truly embrace change, you're already focused on data. You're already focusing on that from a marketing perspective, KPIs, where things are headed in the future is really customer service. To me, the way to compete in terms of the Wall Street money coming in is to create the best client service so that when the clients need an excellent trial attorney, they're with your firm because the trial attorneys believe in your culture, what you're able to do. The catastrophic injury case, they know how to handle the clients, how to counsel them, not just getting them through the trial, but to help them heal as well. And so for us, embrace the data, move with it, and don't make that the only thing, but make it a piece of the puzzle.
Now, I want to do a quick pivot because, AJ, for being somebody so data obsessed, so metric driven, so technology focused, it seems like over the past few years, you've started to look at the things that are sometimes difficult to measure. When you look at culture, when you look at just team alignment, all those things. How's your perspective changed on that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think me and you have similar personalities, and I'm not saying that anecdotally. I know we've taken multiple tests and we pretty much scored the same on all of them. I think it's just me too, as an engineer and as being like a self-reliant person. I'm very much a solver, and I want to know the metrics, and I have a tendency to want the data behind the answer, or like the excuse, or the job, or the process that's getting done. But as you start to get bigger than yourself, I guess, there's that cap. I think Ray Dalio talks about it, like 0 to 50 is just as hard to grow from 50 to 1,000. Because you got to overcome that idea that you can talk to everyone you work with, and that you can understand them all and have a relationship with them all. And so my pivot came there. I think came by necessity. To your point about being, have a lot of perseverance, when it comes to things. I learned the hard way, as well. But I got to a point where I was like, I don't know what's going on everywhere, and I had to admit, like, I can't handle more than 40,000 emails a month. Like, that's my limit, evidently. But when you do that, you say, okay, well, then how do you keep control of the company and where it's going and getting everyone on the same page? And I think to what you were talking about earlier, and we've definitely honed these even through the Chris's Experience program, is that you got to understand job titles aren't responsibilities and accountabilities. That's different. It's like director of ops, you can't just say go. Like that's one thing. You have to actually tell them what you do here. To me, job titles are more external. And then you have to get in the core values, which is everything not on some of these lists. How do you make those micro decisions? And then it comes to your external, just to your point, which is brand. And I've had a huge shift from digital marketing, doing a lot of SEO, where everything is touch point and cross-channel attribution and multi-touch. And then you start realizing that things like brand that are hard to measure actually lift the top line revenue and everything else. And so, sure, I like the idea of maybe measuring it someday, but yeah, you gotta respect that a brand and a narrative and feeling and why you do everything in this culture becomes more important than the economics or the math behind it.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about brand. Bob, you've had involvement. I know you tied in with the Georgia Bulldogs and a few other affiliations. What's been kind of your strategy as far as growing the brand?
You guys start with what's your vision? What are you standing for? What do you want to do different? I think growing the brand is just who you are, and you want to get it out there and explain your way of doing things. That's why we started the M&T way. It's our process internally of how we're going to do stuff. It's also external. It tells clients what you should expect when you come here. And I think it's critical that you stand for something. There's a lot of different ways to approach a case. In family law, there's firms that will fight hard. There's ones, though, that will try to settle too quickly. You got to find what you want to stand for. What is that unique buying proposition that you talk about?
And Alex, I know you've kind of undergone a brand shift, right? For many years, being known as kind of the volume-based advertiser. Now, I mean, you quite literally renamed the firm Alexander Shunnarah Trial Attorneys.
Well, I mean, we changed our brand. You know, we were a pre-lit firm for a long time. It worked well, but then as the insurance companies tightened up, we built a litigation team, and I think we've built a great litigation team based on the verdicts we've had, the cases we try all over the country. But I mean, we are a brand, and mine is kind of synonymous because my name and my firm is the exact same. But it's what do you stand for? Excellence, excellent legal services. We'll fight for you. We'll go to war for you, and to actually back up everything you say and do.
Yeah. So I'm curious, actually, to follow up with that. It's interesting you made that shift, and we talked about this. Even John Morgan seems to be making the shift away from pre-lit to focusing on trying cases. And why is that? Is some change coming?
Well, I mean, if you wanted to do it from a data standpoint, if you looked at it from a data standpoint, I mean, there's no doubt that anyone in this room will tell you, you're always going to settle the cases for more money if you litigate the cases. Insurance companies just make business decisions. And honestly, right now, they're defending them, they're denying them, they're delaying them. So we're forced into litigating them.
And Eric, I'm curious, just as you've grown the brand, you've also had partnership with Najee Harris, and how would you define the Chaffin Luhana brand?
Yeah, look, I think for us, we defined the brand very early, doing good by doing right. It's a focal point for our core values. It's what we are as a firm. You can't go and do justice in the world unless you do. You can't seek justice in the world unless you do justice in the process. That's our belief, and it comes from being compassionate, caring to our clients, to just excellence. And I'm amazed as somebody who's worked with Chris now for 4 years, and I think early on we actually need to clarify our vision, make sure it's communicated across our team. But now I've taught some intensives for Chris for about a year now, and I think 2 different groups, about 50 lawyers in each group, so about 100 different firms, I think, something like that. And I'm just amazed by the lawyers that come up to me and they say, I've lost sight on why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's become about the money. It's become a grind. My team doesn't enjoy it. We're not enjoying it. And so if you don't know what you're about, and believe me, I'll first to say, at some point I've got lost in that myself. We all do. You become complacent. Figure that out. Do that vision day with Chris. It's been phenomenal for us. That was about 4 years ago, and it's the rocket fuel as you described for you guys at Chris, Michael, and it's been really great for us.
Now, the thing that's always impressed me about all of you is just the fact that you're all very successful. You can have egos the size of this stadium, and who could blame you? But how have you remained humble and open and willing to share and transparent, all these different things? Eric, I'll start with you. I'll ask everyone.
Yeah, look, it's something that, as I said to you, Michael, and I think our podcast, it's someone. I'm 51 years old, and for about 40 years, I actually didn't openly talk about the fact that I was sexually abused at age 5. And so now I'm actually able to talk about it. It's something that, I think the first time I spoke about it publicly was after a glass walk at a Chris Beck's group. Guys like these guys and others, certainly the safety of actually being able to speak publicly about it was really important to me. And so going through that, you carry a lot. You carry insecurities, as Dave Goggins would say. And, just staying humble, I think, is understanding that everybody goes through some adversity in their lives. We can all identify with it. Looking out the crowd and seeing familiar faces, I know the struggles of many people in this room. And so, if you're kind with yourself, kind with others, it's the best dose of humility, and we're all human. And Michael, I applaud you for your vulnerability. I have to say, back in 2018, when I was at a summit, sitting in chairs like all of you here, and seeing Michael, who is a great salesperson, candidly, Michael, I think I've said this to you, I was a little turned off because I'm not a salesperson in that way, and I've come to learn that you are a really genuine, caring person, as is Jess. And as I said, it's you guys create a safe place for people like me to be vulnerable. And I think as individuals, as leaders, unless you really deal with those things for yourself, you can't be the best leader, can't be the best spouse, you can't be the best father. And so I'm really grateful for that.
Thank you. Okay. There you go. Well said. Alex, how do you remain humble?
Well, I believe that ego stands for edging God out. I think that if you don't humble yourself, you'll be humbled. I don't think you'll be very successful in business. But you were asking earlier, the reason that I stay motivated on a daily basis is I feel that, I truly mean this. I have a responsibility to 125 attorneys and 400 staff members and A lot of people rely on me, my family. And if that doesn't get you motivated, then nothing will get you motivated. And I take that as a serious responsibility. In regards to continuing to learn, I guess I'm smart enough to understand that I don't know everything. I really don't know too much. But I want to, if I may, just for a second, understand the time is, when I joined CRISP about 4 years ago, Michael has been instrumental for my firm in 4 years. He has made us much better. I truly believe this. I've always said if you can have an A-plus person in every seat and not get any more cases, that we would double our revenue. I think it could triple, but we'll just say double, and I know what that means. And so with your help, and I want to thank you sincerely, teaching us how to hire people properly, putting in the KPIs, building our C-suites and our infrastructure. I think you're a big reason that in just 4 years, we went from about $50 million in revenue to $80 million. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, Bob.
I never think about it in terms of where I am. I always think about where I want to be. What was the mission of our firm? One of our key principles is we want to improve access to justice. I look at the family law field and 50% are unrepresented. They can't afford an attorney of any type. One of our goals is to find a way to minimize that, find a way to help people across the board. And it's not easy, but I feel like my mission is so far to go. I don't even pause to think about where we are. I got a great team. I appreciate the folks that came here today. It takes a step. It takes a village. It really does take everyone rowing in the same direction to get to where you want to be. So I don't really think about it. Just think about what can we accomplish tomorrow.
Okay. That's right. AJ.
That's interesting. Do you know when we met, Michael? Do you remember? It's
No.
funny. I had to look it back up to confirm, but you called me through a tech buddy. I think pitching me like Facebook advertising or something like that at the time, and it was like 2014.
Yes,
I think you were still shooting some of these videos.
Yep.
And then it took very many years later before the Chris and we started working together. So I've seen the same journey for you. We're very similar persons, like personality types. So I also get that vulnerability is like one of our hardest things to do with our personality types. And so I was thinking the same thing, even like sharing stuff about your family and getting into your values. And that's leading me up to the humility is that I call my 3 daughters my social experiments. Because it's always interesting when you get into very complicated things at work and you go, who'll give you an honest answer? Kids. So you boil down the question to something they'll answer you, and it's very interesting to hear their feedback. It also gives you a lot of insight on how the world is very different. It's going to make me sound old, like, it's not your dad's world. But so I think about in two reasons why people go the wrong way that I wasn't smart enough to learn, until much later on in life. But I think with everything in social media and everything going on and the information gathered right now, to your point, the first thing in the pyramid you can do is to have freedom and money. And so when people think that way, most people don't get there. So that's like that becomes that only thing. And that's very misleading just from a purpose standpoint, So we already have that disadvantage for a lot of the younger generation, a lot of kids, it's getting worse and worse. And then, to say that I wasn't wise enough to know this until I kind of got there is like you get to the point in business and everything else when you say, I guess I could just quit. And you realize that would be boring. Like, have all the money in the world and, show you a guy that lacks for nothing and hates himself, like that kind of thing. So I think I got to that point where I was like, I could choose that path, like slowly go retire and live next to Morgan in Honolulu or wherever, or figure out what my purpose was. And I spent probably a good part of a year really, that was the only reason probably I ever stopped to look back and go, oh, it's not about the money or whatever. I like the joke about entrepreneurs. They trade a 40-hour work week for a 120-hour work week for less money and less freedom. But no, I think humility comes from like that perspective or experience that shows you money's not what makes the man. And so it's like what defines you, what do you live by, and what's important. And that reminds me all the time.
All right, man, right on the dot. Let's give it up for them. Thank you. Very grateful for you all.